Welcome to the Better Business Podcast. I'm your host, Austin Zelan. Join me week after week as I interview high-level entrepreneurs on their journey to success, both in business and personal development. Each week presents new stories to learn from and new ideas on how to run a better business. Stay updated with all the guests we'll have by subscribing to this podcast. Alrighty, welcome to Better Business with Austin Zelan. Today we have our guest, Mr. Ryan Paneta. Very excited to have you, man. And we're going to ask him a couple questions about his entrepreneurial journey and how he has learned to run a better business. Now, I know he's involved in many businesses, so I'll kind of give him the freedom to talk about whichever one he would like to talk about. But do you want to just kind of tell us a little bit about yourself and some of the businesses that you've started and maybe partnered up on, and which ones you enjoy the most?
Yeah. For those who don't know, I got an entrepreneurship about 10 years ago. You know, I spent my whole life playing baseball, and I was fortunate enough to play pro baseball and get drafted and do all that. But, you know, in the minor leagues, you don't really make much money. I was making $1,200 a month, and I had to figure out how to get work. And you can't really get a job when you're gone most of the year. So I was forced to be an entrepreneur, and, you know, I got into real estate at a young age when I was 21. And, you know, starting out as a realtor, I hated it. And eventually that led to me doing a ton of other side hustles, like flipping furniture on Craigslist, slinging cell phones and everything else, until eventually I found house flipping in 2015. So I started flipping houses then, maxed out all my credit cards, got hard money loans, did all that stuff. And eventually it took off. You know, we flipped one deal that turned into 2, 4, 10 to 50 to 100, and now we flip hundreds and hundreds of homes. You know, we own hundreds of units of apartments now. That then led to social media and education. So now we have an 8-figure education company where we teach people how to flip houses. Then that led to other education arms where now we teach people how to do social media. We teach people how to, you know, just general business. You know, I started a tax firm 4 years ago that I recently sold a few months ago. You know, we have an NFT project. We have, what else do we have? I'm trying to think. You know, there's a lot of things going on, but I've started a lot of different businesses, and, you know, I've consolidated, I've scaled, I've done pretty much everything you can imagine as an entrepreneur. Yeah.
So it sounds like you really got your start in the house flipping, and that's where the momentum started taking on. And then you found that maybe education or educational tools are something that you're passionate about, and you wanted to double down on that. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, I did not ever want to be a guru. I grew up with that being a negative stigma because I learned from Bigger Pockets and things like that. And in 2018, I went to my first ever business conference. It was 10X Growth Con. And I remember Russell Brunson was speaking, and he was like, hey, people want to know what you know. And at that point I had flipped, when did I flip at that point? I don't know, almost 100 houses at that point. And I already had so many people like, Ryan, how do you do it? And I would take people to coffee and go tell them the thing, but they would never do anything. Right. So eventually it started to become overwhelming. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to write a book. And so I wrote a book in 2018 called Flip Your Future. And that was really only meant to just be like, dude, just read the book. So you don't have to keep explaining this over and over again.
Yeah, that's smart.
And then like after watching Russell, I was like, all right, I guess I'll just create a course. And so I created a course. I didn't make any money. I literally sold like 3 courses that year. The next year, I didn't even want to push it because I was just like, I don't want to be a guru. And, you know, I probably made like 50 grand in the education space. And it all came from one event. I just held like a mastermind retreat in Big Bear with my Airbnbs. But yeah, in 2020, when I finally got on social media, you know, at that point I wasn't on YouTube. There was no TikTok. I was like not taking content serious. 2020, I decided to take it serious. And that was when it started to really make sense to take education serious. Because at that point, you know, all these people are coming in like, dude, how do I learn? How do I do this? And so for the first time ever in 2020, I actually started coaching people, because at that point I was never a coach. It was like, just get the course, get the book. I'll do like a one-time event, but there was never any coaching.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, in 2020 is when I first started coaching as well. And it was kind of funny because I didn't really want to get into the coaching space. And so this dude hit me up and he's like, hey, can you coach me on this and this? And so I just gave him what I thought was a ridiculous price. And he says, yes. And I'm like, heck, like, what do I do now? So now I had to like build a whole curriculum around it. And it's been a great journey though. So what would you say is your favorite part about entrepreneurship? Is it like time freedom, financial freedom? Is it maybe the ability to do things that you weren't able to do before? What would you say it is?
I think the reason I became an entrepreneur was for all the freedom you mentioned, right?
Yeah.
Time is important. I've
Mhm.
got 3 kids, just hit 10 years of marriage.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I want to do whatever I want. I mean, that's the whole point of being an entrepreneur, right?
Yeah.
Money freedom. And I wouldn't even say it's money freedom. No matter how much you make, you're always going to worry about money. So, more so just not having a cap and being in control of how much I can make, and there's no limit.
Hmm.
So, I look at financial freedom a little differently than most. And then just, like the freedom of not having a constraint on what you can do and what you can say and all this stuff. It's like, dude, I'm not trying to follow anyone's rules and have them tell me what to do.
Yeah.
I want to talk about this. I'm going to talk about it. And nobody can tell me what to do. Like, it's great.
Yeah. Yeah, that's that is something that's very interesting. If you look at some of the most wealthy people in the world, they just kind of do whatever they want. They talk about whatever they want. They have that freedom, like you said, because nobody's like in control of what they're doing. So that is an important aspect. And so on this journey of entrepreneurship, as you continue developing and growing and improving your businesses, how important would you say learning new skills or growth was to that journey?
Back then, I didn't realize that that's what was happening.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, well, I'll just flip houses. Like, I'll just figure it out and learn along the way. And I did.
Hmm.
And then after that skill was, let's just say, mastered, which it's never fully mastered, but good enough, right? And better than most. I'm like, all right, well, now I got to learn this social media skill. And it's a completely different thing.
Yeah.
And I don't care how good you are at business, it doesn't translate into this. This is like being an actor. It's different. You got to learn how to be on camera. You got to learn how to speak properly. You got to learn how to come up with good ideas and hooks and be personable. And
Yeah.
so it's completely different than flipping a house or whatever. So I had to learn and master the skill, very much in that being a baseball player was a different skill.
Yeah.
And, I tell this all the time to like solopreneurs. It's like, look, you're a good salesperson right now. You're hustling, you're grinding, you're making money, you can do all that, but becoming an actual business owner is a new skill of hiring people, leading, building an organization. Like, there's so much that goes into it. And so you're constantly learning new skills to get to the next level. And my biggest thing is that people need to learn skills that are, relevant to whatever it is they want to accomplish, right? Like, if your goal is finance, to me, like, all right, well, I better learn how to sell. I better learn how to market.
Yeah.
But you can't do everything at once. Like, you really got to hone in on one skill before you go mess around trying to go learn all these things simultaneously.
Hmm. Okay. And do you feel like you controlled your environment, which you were in order to improve your learning? Because I know, like, in my personal journey, I didn't realize that I didn't know so many things when I was in a certain environment. And then once I left that environment and put myself in a maybe a higher caliber environment, I realized, like, wow, like, I don't know this, I don't know this, I don't know this. And so that like really inspired me to get up to that level and start learning those things that I didn't know.
Yeah, I think it's important to the hard thing is you want to be, in my opinion, in all stages of rooms. And so what I mean by that is when I went to GrowthCon in 2018,
Mm-hmm.
I saw these guys on stage for the first time. I
Yeah.
was nowhere near qualified or anything to be on that stage.
Yeah.
But it inspired me. I was like, you know what, dude, one day, I could have an event like this if I really wanted to. One day I could be one of those people. I could know those people.
Mm-hmm.
This was in 2018. I
Yeah.
didn't know how it would happen. I didn't know when it would. I was just like, but just hearing their stories, seeing them, I'm like, they're just normal dudes. There ain't no reason I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
And it wasn't necessarily like a goal, like, oh, this has to happen today. It was just like one day, that's so like, let's just say that's a far away goal. I don't even know what to do, but like, hey, I'm inspired to see like what the next level looks like,
Yeah.
or a few levels away, right? But then there are rooms that are attainable. So it's like, all right, you got your current room that you're in, whatever that happens to be. So you're probably around people who are like you, or else you wouldn't hang with them. You know, if you're just like the big dog in a small pond, it usually doesn't last that way for long. Like you end up still having friends who are at your level. So my advice is like, all right, you would know where like the end goal is. You would know where you're currently at. And then, you know, what's the next room that is going to get you a step closer to the end goal. And so it's like, for me at that point in 2018, I was like, okay, I need to get around other people. I'm not going to go get around Grant Cardone right this second.
Yeah.
But who, you know, what rooms can I get in? And so I started joining real estate masterminds. I'd never paid for education to that point. And I was like, real estate's where I need to just continue to get better. Even though I'm good right now, I'm still not even close to how good I can be. And so, you know, I joined real estate masterminds. I got around other millionaires. I had just become a millionaire. So it was like, I was new and, you know, that was helpful because now I was like at people who were like a level above me.
Okay.
And so I was learning from them. I'm like, okay, these things are way more applicable to me right now at this moment in my career. Because what Grant Cardone does back then, 5 years ago, wasn't applicable to me. It's like, dude, I'm not in digital marketing. I'm not in education. I'm not buying apartment buildings. Like, yeah, I'll learn some things from him, but it wasn't applicable. Whereas these guys, like the level above me, it's like, oh, dude, okay, cool. I could do that this year if I just do this. And so, you know, that's kind of how I took it, you know, level by level. And then, you know, eventually, you know, 5 years later, I did get to be with all these guys. It was kind of like weird experiencing it. Like, oh, dude, like, GC's here in my office. I'm in his office. We're just hanging out. We're, you know, this guy. And I was like, wow. And now the things I'm talking about with them are applicable to what I'm doing now. And I'm learning it. And I'm like, okay, you've been doing this 20 years longer than me, but I still like, I'm at this level now where I can see what you did and I can actually apply some of it.
Yeah. And that's because you went through that process growing step by step by step. Which is very important because, you know, sometimes we do get into rooms like that or we see somebody online and we're like, wow, they're like way up in the stars and it seems unattainable, but it really is if you just take it step by step, like you said.
Well, and that's the thing I was saying too. Like if you get in a room above you, then it's not unattainable. You're like, oh, this is like right here within my grasp. Some people, I would argue most people don't think the way I thought 5 years ago, where it was like, oh, dude, one day I could throw an event like this. I could be,
for sure.
Like, they're like, dude, these guys are gods. There's no way. Like, I've never looked at anyone like that. Like, even like a guy like Elon Musk, like that, I'm not anywhere near his level, but if you were to ask me, could I learn something from Elon Musk? I would say not really. Like the things he's doing and thinking about are just not really relevant to me. I just can't even comprehend how I would apply it to what I'm doing. But Cardone and those guys, like that's the level that like, okay, this is very applicable. But one day maybe, you know?
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, I think it's a very important lesson. What you're saying is like learning just above you from the people that are just above you and you keep going level to level to level. So how do you find these, maybe that level, that next level that's just above you? How do you surround yourself with those people? Is there like a certain process you use? Do you just Google events near me or something like meetups?
You know, you hear about things, man. Like if you're successful in business, you're going to hear about other things your friends are in. Like, oh yeah, he's in that group.
Like masterminds.
Yeah. Masterminds. You know, a big event coming up, whatever the case is, right? You hear about it. And so, you know, I had heard about these different things. And also too, sometimes you don't qualify for it yet. And so you know about it and you're like, dude, I gotta get there to qualify for it. So like, I remember the first one I learned or I joined, I think you had to be doing like 50 house flips a year. That was like the minimum. And so, you know, I wasn't eligible to even join it until, you know, a certain period. And I was like, okay, cool. Like I could join this now and it's all good. And now I'm around other people like that. So yeah, you hear about it. I mean, you'd have to live under a rock in today's age with social media and ads and everything else that's just popping up. Like you would know.
And do you feel like these groups, they helped you to improve your own business or just like personal growth?
Good question. I mean, I think personal growth is you're always going to get it from a lot of sources. But I would say I mainly go to these groups for business.
Mm-hmm.
For me, personal growth is just, for me, it's just all biblical. At the end of the day, I'm spending an hour a day, every morning with God. So I'm praying, I'm reading my Bible, journaling, memorizing verses. I'm doing all these things. We run small group every week. I have like literally this morning, I had an hour meeting with my pastor. And so it's like, for me,
Yeah.
personal development all stems from, your foundation, right? Because if you think about it, so many people are so confused about personal development because they're like, oh, well, freaking Tony Robbins told me to do this and Gary Vee told me to do that. There's no singular source.
Yeah.
And so you have conflicting information because one guy says this, the other guy says that. What do you believe? Is sacrificing your family, the important thing to achieve success because that's what, these 5 guys did? Or are you listening to another guy who's like, well, look, would you be happier with a fulfilled family and healthy, but maybe less money? And you're like, that's that. So for me, it's like, well, if I have just one source that I'm looking to for all my information and a source that is not going to flip-flop, tomorrow, because half these guys flip-flop over what they believe one day versus the other.
Yep.
And I can just go to like a firm foundation and tap into that and say, okay, well, this is what God has literally said since the beginning of time of how to live.
Yeah.
How to treat your wife, how to treat your body, how to treat your customers, your employees. It's like, what else personal development do I need? I don't need to go to freaking Tony Robbins thing to figure it out. It's right there. Yeah. It's way better.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so true. There's actually so many like biblical principles that are very applicable to business. And I feel like a lot of business people don't even realize that. It's so true, even as far as like business growth or like you said, personal development. It's all in the Bible. It's all there. So do you follow like a specific reading plan or like certain books of the Bible that you like to read every morning? Or is it just, from A to Z?
Well, first off, the Bible talks about money more than any other subject.
Yeah.
So most people don't know that. It's like, they're not talking about salvation. They're not talking about heaven. They're not talking about, being a good neighbor. And they talk about money more than any singular subject. And it's interesting because it's like, as humans, that's like the biggest driver for most people because we all need it, even though we may not want to like admit it, we need it. But for me anyways, when it comes to just development spiritually, I was raised in the church. And so, it's not like this new thing for me. I've, done a lot of different things in the church and serving. And, we even have, we're in the process of becoming a nonprofit called Wealthy Kingdom. And I started it this year. So we were about 6 months in and we launched 50 Bible studies nationwide for entrepreneurs.
Wow.
And
awesome.
My goal is to get to about 250 next year. But it started out as just like, dude, I've been holding Bible study in my office for 6 years every week. And, people just started asking like, dude, how do I join? I'm out in California. I wish I had something like this. And I'm like, well, it just kind of is what it is. And then finally, with the skills I built with, building communities and everything else, I'm like, okay, we could easily do it now nationwide. And I don't even like promote it. We've not run ads. We haven't done anything. And, it's growing rapidly and I'm excited to see where that goes. But, for me, like, where do I learn? How do I read? Like I said, I've been doing the morning routine for almost a decade now. And so just waking up an hour early to do all of my spiritual development, I mean, it's changed my life and I can guarantee it'll change anyone else's life.
Yeah.
But,
better than a cold plunge.
Way better than cold plunge. Every time I hear the cold plungers, dude, I just, I was interviewing Bradley 2 days ago and, he was like, yeah, dude, I just got a cold plunge. I was like, you are the definition of why I don't like cold plunging. And he's like, what do you mean? I'm like, because these cold plungers, they're always like this. They're so inconsistent. They're looking for the next biohack.
Yeah.
And I told Brad, I was like, Brad, your weight is always like this. Some days you're fat, seasons you're, you decide to get to work. I'm like, why are you just not consistent? And for me, I'm just always trying to figure out what's going to make me consistent.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I've done this the last 10 years and I've been pretty consistent with, faith and my health and growth. And I'm not perfect by any means, but this is way more consistent than what the cold plungers are doing.
Yeah.
And, for me at this point, if it comes to reading the Bible, I read a new version of the Bible every year. So,
Okay.
I'll do NIV, ESV. This year I did the New King James. Next year I'm doing NLT.
Okay.
I've done the Message, which, some people don't like, but, I want to learn, and I want to learn about other religions and everything else too, because as I've gotten bigger on social media and had guests who obviously aren't Christian,
Yeah.
we inevitably start going into discussions and rabbit holes. And so I've found myself having to be even stronger in theology to, combat it.
Yeah. Definitely. Is there a favorite translation that you have or a favorite version of the Bible?
I just always tell people start with the NIV.
Yeah.
I'm not one of these guys that's like, oh, if you don't read this Bible, it's fake. Just start with the NIV and it's
Yeah.
fine. That's what most people are going to use.
Yeah. Awesome. Cool. So, as far as like our viewers or listeners, they're wanting to find ways to run a better business. So let's say they do start reading their Bible every day, every morning. They're praying, they're reading their Bible, they're getting that personal development in, whether it's from that or maybe from these masterminds that they're
Right.
joining that are just a level above. So they have applicable growth. What other things do you think they could do to like almost immediately run a better business? Like, are there certain areas in your business that you like to look at, like, oh, my fulfillment needs help, or my marketing or sales? Like, what are immediate areas that people can look at to run a better business?
Well, it depends once again what stage of business you're in, right? Because if you're just starting out, you're not too worried about fulfillment and KPIs and everything else. All you're worried about is just getting sales.
Yeah.
Like how the heck do I learn to sell?
Yeah.
And selling is always going to be important, and no matter what level you're at, right? So, for me, if I was to tell you, hey, this is what I am working on at this very moment at my business, I'm literally going into the back end process of every department. I'm saying, hey,
Mm-hmm.
tell me how we handle our marketing. Let me just understand every aspect. How quickly are leads being hit? What's our cost per lead? Where does it go? How quickly, what bucket for the sales team is it in? How many times are we following up? Little things like, just like I could go so granular with you that, I wouldn't have been able to do that 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And then same thing with sales, same thing with fulfillment. Like you said, hey, when somebody signs up, okay, how quickly are they getting that welcome email? How quickly is somebody calling them and getting them, onboarded and walking through everything and how to succeed? How quickly are we getting them their first win? How quickly, so you start thinking about all these little detail oriented things. But here's the thing. That's where I'm at today.
Yeah.
Okay? If you're watching this and you don't even have an offer or a product yet, or you just started, well, you're testing everything. You're like, look, I think I have this idea, like you did with coaching. You're like, oh, dang, he just paid this much money. I would be asking him, what is it you want?
Yeah.
How can I help you? Oh, I want to know X, Y, Z. Cool. And then so you start doing things and you start to realize that everybody wants this certain thing. This is a problem.
Yeah.
And, I've had products that have made millions of dollars where, it took a year for me to realize like, oh, dang, dude, like I thought they were going to come for this, but the reality is they really want this.
Mm.
And so, you rebuild the curriculum around this thing that is the real problem, even though you originally thought this was the problem.
Yeah, I think that's one of the curious things about business plans. It's like we can have everything planned out and everything mapped out. And then when it actually happens, you realize that, hey, maybe this actually wasn't the solution, or maybe there's a better way to deliver this, or maybe people are needing this more than what I think they need. So that flexibility definitely makes a big difference. So as far as flexibility and growth are concerned, do you believe that you need to continue growing in order to achieve your full potential? Or do you think that your business just kind of like coasts into that and just like naturally achieves growth?
I think there's both, and I've experienced it. I think that for me anyways, this is what I do. I go through seasons where I am hyper building let's just say I'm in build mode
Mm-hmm.
and, we're doing something completely new or we've plateaued and it's time for me to like find the solution for the next level. And,
Okay.
that's a phase I'm in right now at this very moment. But I would say the last couple of years I was coasting, to your point. I would say that I was not learning and, um, I was not like in the granular aspects that were needed in order to have, could we have grown way more the last couple of years if I was? For sure.
Mm-hmm.
But, the question becomes, is that a sustainable pace? And I
Mm.
think that for most entrepreneurs, they think that they can just work 80 hours a week forever, and they can't. I've yet to find any that sustain that pace for 20 years straight.
Mm.
You know, now I
Yeah.
have found many entrepreneurs who they'll go through seasons of building, and it's like, yeah, and a season's different for everybody. It could be a year, it could be a few years, it could be it could be a quarter.
Yeah.
It could be different for everyone, but they understand that they need to go into hyper focus and overdrive and everything else. And then
Mm-hmm.
once it's built, it's like, all right, cool. Hard work's done. The heavy lifting is over. The foundation is built.
Yeah.
Now I can kind of just like see how it goes and then tweak it along the way.
Mm. Yeah. So you build something, you build the vehicle, you put it into motion, and then you kind of course correct as it goes, in order to be more efficient. So, what are some top skills that you would say help you in those build times? Like when it's a build season for you, is it just consistency? Is it tenacity, determination? Is it just creativity, or maybe even just hiring? Are we hiring the right people to build it for us and then managing the process? Or what have you seen as your top skills in that build phase?
Man, dude, there's a lot of ways I could go with this question. To start it from the top, you first have to have the right goal in mind when you're building something. And
Yep.
so most people, when they're creating a goal, are thinking strictly results. And so they're like, oh, well, we need to hit this revenue by the end of the year, or this is our 3-year projection or whatever, right? And so for them, every month, they're just looking at the number and whether or not like they're on pace and on target.
Mm.
To me, that's the wrong way to build. I think that you need to first adopt a process driven mindset, not a results driven mindset, because inevitably, with most great things, it starts like this. It's not like doing anything. And
Yeah.
so eventually you figure it out and you start catching steam and momentum, and it goes like that. Like you could trace back almost every successful company. That's what's happened. It's never been, yeah, we just grow every month, same every month. Like it
Yeah,
doesn't
yeah, yeah.
happen like that. So the reason most people never achieve anything great is because they cannot stick with this. They give up. They try social media. They do it for a few months. They spend all this money and they're like, dude, this doesn't work. They go and start a business. It fails. They're like, being an entrepreneur is not for me.
Mm.
Like, bro, every entrepreneur's failed. So, it's just part of that process before you finally make it. And so I think first you have to shift your mindset of, all right, I'm going to be process driven and I'm going to trust the process, even though the results are not there and the results may not be there for a while. Okay. Once you have that mindset, you can enter the build phase. And then when you're in the build phase, there's a lot of things that need to happen. Number one, you need the right strategy. So, if I said, hey, I want you to go flip houses, and you're like, great. And I say, okay, so, I don't know. The best way to flip houses is you first need to go move to Mexico, and then you need to, do this and that. It's like, well, that's like the wrong strategy. It's not even going to work.
Yeah.
So you need to make sure that you have the right strategy. Most people think they're going into it with the right strategy and they have no like guidance. So I think you need like, whether it's a mentor, whether it's like copy and pasting something from a book or YouTube, I don't really care, but at least have some strategy that someone else successfully has already executed. And then also have enough, whoever that person is, to give you feedback. Because if you don't have the strategy and then you don't have a way to get feedback on whether or not you're even executing right, it makes it really hard. And for me, as I'm building out all this back end stuff I'm telling you about, I'm getting feedback from like 10 different people, the best of the best in the world, just telling me, hey, no, this is how you need to hire this position. This is how you pay them. This is the structure. Hey, this is how you need to set up this automation and this logic. And like, there's such complex questions that only an expert would know.
Mm-hmm.
And if I tried to figure it out on my own, I'm going to lose money. Number one, because it's just not going to work the right way. Number two, I'm going to waste so much time, which inevitably is more money lost. Because if it was right from the beginning, we'd have started making money way sooner.
Yeah.
And so, you know, during the build stage, you have to have the right thing and you got to have the right feedback. There's just no other way to do it. And most people don't have that. They just wing it themselves. And guess what? If you've never had success or done it, what makes you think you'll know how to course correct? You won't.
Yeah.
There's very few people that just figure it out on their own and they're that good. They're few and far between. I'm not even that good. And, you know, you do that, you start building, you're trusting the process, and then boom, you start to get results. And you're like, oh man, this is great.
Yeah.
And you start to identify the weaknesses. You're like, oh crap, man. Like, we're selling good. People love it, but no one knows about it. So you're like, dude, we got to learn marketing. So you learn marketing. So then you start getting leads and you're like, dang, we're getting leads and we're selling, but now I have like too many people. Good problem. Well, now we got to get operations dialed in.
Yeah.
And then a new problem arises. All right, cool. We're doing that. Dude, our overhead is way more now. We're not as profitable as before. Okay, well, we're going to have to go get our marketing down. We're going to have to like increase our sales process and conversions so that, you know, we can our margin is where it needs to be to handle all of this new overhead. And then you're always trusting the process to the next stage because you're like most solopreneurs who start to hire and they see their margins go down and people make mistakes. Like, dude, I'm going back to what I was doing. These guys suck. You know, I'll just do it all myself. And I'm like, you're an idiot. You just didn't learn the next skill.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so interesting. So you would actually say that the process is more important than having that end goal in mind.
Way more.
Yeah.
Way more. Because, dude, think about it. If you are, like, let's just think about it biblically, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, biblically, why would somebody want to believe in God? Well, I'll tell you, the logical reason is there's only one guarantee on this earth. You're going to die. That's the only guarantee. And the other guarantee, well, it's not, but this is the consequence of dying. You're dead way longer than you're alive.
Yep.
So you got to answer the question of what happens after death. That's the variable we're trying to solve for.
Yeah.
And there's lots of theories on what happens. And if you choose wrong in many of those theories, the consequences are not good. So to me, logically, you'd want to answer what happens after I die. Why am I so worried about what's happening here right now when this is like a bigger problem to solve? People don't think about it because we're short-sighted.
Yeah.
But biblically, what I would say is, okay, I know that something's going to happen. I've done my research, my faith journey, everything else. This is what I believe is going to happen. This is what I believe the end result's going to be by me believing this. Now what? Okay, well, I like have this end goal. There's not a result. I guess the result would be I'm in heaven with God, but like, it's not a numerical result. It's not like I measure, oh dude, how many good deeds did I do today to get, like, am I closer to heaven? Because that's what people do.
Yeah.
But that's not it. The thing is, I already know I'm good. So now what? Well, now it's just the process. It's like, I know what God tells me to do and how to live. And so I'm just going to trust the process. And there's no like result-based thing that tells me that, hey, I'm like like all I can do is just trust the process and let it play out and do everything every day. And when I die, we're going to find out whether I was right or not.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think the Bible is full of processes and like systems. And I think when God created, he specifically created processes. And even if you look at creation, when God created, let's say, man, he didn't just create an end result man. He's like, okay, cool. Now you're on your own. He created a process. Have dominion, replenish the earth, multiply, do all these things, right? And so that's a process that then allowed God to rest on the seventh day. Because he knew that he set the process in motion and it's going to continue growing, and men will continue multiplying, and plants and animals, everything was set in motion.
Well, if you think about what I was just saying with building, right? To create is to build. The creator built this world for us.
Yeah.
And you think about when he created Adam, the first thing he did was he gave Adam a job. He was like, bro, you're a landscaper. He's like, go take care of this garden, and everything I've built for you, right? Then he gives him another job. After that, he's like, yo, go name all the animals.
Yeah.
So he's like, he's just putting them to work immediately. And then he's like, hey, don't eat from the tree. Hey, let me get you a helper. Hey, he starts giving him, like you said, a process. And you think about what I just said. It's like, yo, you want to do something good in business. What do you need? You need a mentor, somebody who's telling you, who's already done this before, what to do. Then you need feedback. Yeah. Hey, he's giving him feedback. Like, hey, you're doing good. Don't do that. Like feedback.
Yep.
And what happens when you don't have that? Well, you get temptation and you fall down the wrong path and you screw it up for everyone else.
Yeah, totally agree with you. So, just ballpark statistics. How likely is somebody to succeed without the right strategy and without the right mentor? Like just figure it out on their own.
1% or less.
1%?
Easily. Look, what is the statistic? 80% of businesses fail within 5 years.
Within 5 years, yeah.
Okay. That's the businesses that actually even got going.
Yeah.
How many never even got going, but they wanted a business? They tried something and they don't even count as a statistic. It's for sure less than 1%.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So one big aspect of your business, I believe, is your social media presence, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, whatever. And how would you say that has played into the growth of your business? Have you leveraged going viral on social media to grow your business?
Oh, for sure. When I first started, I was flipping houses. And so I saw a little bit of social media helping me where I would post a house flip and people would be like, wow, that's cool, man. Like, how do I invest with you? So I got a bunch of investors that way.
Cool.
Or people would be like, oh, dude, I have a deal. Where do I send it to? I didn't know you buy.
Yeah.
And so I would get deals and investors from just
cool.
posting what I was doing. And then, like I said, in 2020, we're locked up during COVID and I had 50 house flips going. So I had 50 flips right here in Vegas.
At the same time?
At the same time.
Wow.
And, people are like, yeah, the real estate market's dead. We don't know what's going to happen and all this stuff. And truthfully, I had faith either way that, hey, whatever happens, I'll be good nonetheless.
Yeah.
I did not think that it was going to crash. I felt like, I would have never predicted that it would have went on the rip that it went on for the last bunch of years until they raised rates. But I was definitely confident that dude, this is not that eventually this is all going to go away. They're going to do some stuff to prevent foreclosures. They're not going to just force people to get foreclosed on. I knew that was going to happen. So I actually kept buying during COVID because all my friends and everybody couldn't sell their deals. They were scared. And I was like, dude, you know what? I'm going to take a bet that I think you guys are wrong. And so I took a bet and I started buying and I got crazy deals because no one else was buying.
Yeah.
And made me a lot of money. But during that time, I also wanted to double down. Well, I wanted to hedge really. And I said, well, what else can I do? I'm stuck at home. I can't go to the office. I don't know how this is going to play out. Literally, I can't do anything. Sellers are not selling right now. They're just indecisive because they're scared. They don't know. They don't even want us to go to their house and look at it. So what do we do? And I just started at that time, I honestly wasn't on social media, consuming it much. I just don't care. I don't even consume social media much today. And my wife, though, she's different than me. She loves YouTube. She had, I'll tell you, we've been married 10 years. She started watching YouTube when we were hey, we got married. And I would watch her watch YouTube in the bed. And I'm like, what are you watching? She's like, oh, it's this family. They do these cool vlogs and pranks. And
yeah.
And I'm like, they just make that on YouTube and people watch it. And she's like, yeah. I just was like, that's so weird to me, but okay. And I remember when I started flipping houses, she's like, let's film it and put it on YouTube. I was like, whatever. So we filmed one and put it on YouTube in 2016. And then she's always loved YouTube. And then finally during COVID, it dawned on me that YouTube was a really important thing. And I think it was a God thing because I got a couple of signs in 1 week. Somebody was like, you should do YouTube. And I got another sign. Somebody was like, dude, have you thought about doing YouTube? And I'm like, why is everyone telling me to do YouTube right now? This is weird.
Yeah.
So I look into it and I go, hey guys, who are your favorite YouTubers? Like, who would I even, like, once again, who's doing it well? And how do I see what they're doing and try to emulate it? So they're like, oh, well, check out this guy, Graham Stephan. Check out this guy, Meet Kevin, you know, all these guys. And I'm like, okay, so what's their deal? Like, what do they do in real estate? And the truth was they weren't really doing anything. And I was like, so these guys have done like 10 deals and whatever. I did that this month. Like, what are we talking about?
Yeah.
And they're like, but they're great. They make good content. I'm like, oh my gosh, dude. Like, what do they make from talking about this? And then I saw a video Graham did. He was like, yeah, I make about like 200 grand a month. It's just me and my camera. I talk about I was like, oh my gosh, dude. These guys make that much money talking about the thing instead of doing the thing. I was like, I couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
And I'm like over here with tens of millions of dollars of debt on the streets, employees, risk, doing the real stuff. And instead of being a hater, like a bunch of my friends in these masterminds are, because they would hate and they'd be like, why do they get all the attention? I'm the man. I was like, dude, you know what? I'm the dummy. I'm the dummy for not knowing this is right here in front of me and I can do it.
Yeah.
And so instead of being a hater, I joined. I was like, I'm just going to start making content. So I went to my wife and I was like, you were right. You told me to do this 5 years ago, but you know, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is today.
Yep.
I'm buying a camera. So I bought a camera and she's like, all right, I'll edit them. I was like, great. So I study Graham and these guys for like 2 weeks straight before I start. I buy every course I could find. I consume it on 2x speed. I start talking to people and it clicked. I was like, oh, this is the exact same way I run my business. There's a process. It all starts with the idea and research. Then it starts with the thumbnail and the title. And there's a very clear process of how to structure a video. And that leads to success. I was like, oh, it's not random. I thought it was random. So then I just start making videos with like a framework. And guess what? They start doing pretty good right off the bat. Now in hindsight, what I'll say is not only was, you know, like I did the right things at that front, but I also had perfect timing. And you can't really predict timing. I mean, I had a hunch that it was a good time to do content because everybody was locked up and on their phones.
Yeah.
But it was like looking back in hindsight, it was literally a perfect storm. And so I got lucky. I maybe was prepared. Maybe it was God. I don't care. Either way, it was the perfect time and I did the right things. And then, you know, by the end of the year, I think I had like 75,000 subscribers on YouTube. I had 400,000 on TikTok. And that was another one where everybody was like, dude, TikTok is for kids. And I was like, I don't know, dude. Seems pretty addictive. And even though no adults are on it yet, I think they will be. And so I made a bet and I got really good at short form content when no one else knew how to do it. There was no agencies. There was no editing services. I made 700 videos on my own, on my phone in the TikTok app. Every morning I filmed 2 of them every day.
Wow.
Because there was no mentor on it. It was new.
Yeah.
I became the guy because I just tested it and figured it out. So inevitably, after that year, I was now this social media guy on real estate. And then in 2021, 2022, people started to then catch on and like, okay, this is really important. I need to start making content. And now today in 2023, 2024, it's not even like a question. It's like, dude, you better be on social media or your competitor is. And if you're not, good luck because you ain't getting seen. Yeah. And it is a huge, huge part of my business for so many reasons. And yeah, I've been talking a lot, but I could tell you all the reasons it's crazy.
Yeah. No, it's very important. It's almost as if you don't have that social media presence, you don't really exist in the business world.
Yeah. If somebody tries to sell me something, what's the first thing you do? You look them up. You're like, okay, what do they got going on Instagram, whatever. Yeah. And then if they're not there, you're like, is this guy even a real person?
Yeah. So true. So as we wrap up here, one last question for you. For our listeners, if they want to go viral on social media, are there certain things that you like to emphasize?
So here's the thing, right? It goes back to, are you looking for a result or are you trusting the process? I'll never use the word going viral. I'll never be like, these are the tips to go viral and get a 1 million view video. I don't believe in that because I think that you're pursuing the wrong thing if that's the goal. And the reason I say that is you could go viral tomorrow. Like I could take anybody and say, hey, lock us in a room. We could go get 1 million views right now this week. I could guarantee it. Now, would the 1 million views be applicable to your business and the things you're trying to accomplish and the people you want to reach? No. I would go make a 1 million view video right now doing some stupid thing with a prank or some hot girl or some car or like, dude, it's easy to get 1 million views.
Yeah.
In that front. But are you
have to be relevant,
getting the right thing, right?
Yeah.
So the question isn't, should I go viral? The question is, how do I build a brand that attracts the right people to my business, my products, and the people I want to watch me?
Yeah.
And that cannot be done overnight. It's process driven. It takes years and years of years to get that trust built.
Yeah, definitely. Awesome, guys. Well, you heard it from Mr. Ryan Paneta himself. You got to have the right strategy. You have to have the right mentor. And most importantly, build a process that's a brand that's going to help you run a better business. Thank you guys for joining us today, and we'll see you on the next episode.